All right. We're going to call this meeting of the Land Reuse and Preservation Agency to order. The chair is here, Ms. Schaup is here, Mr. Saddlefield is excused, Ms. Rye is here, Mr. Bailey is here, and Mr. Mills is here. We have proof of notice, we don't have any correspondence, and we don't have any public comment. Next is the report of the officers. Does anyone have anything?
I just wanted to mention that I just really wanted to thank the staff for putting together like full materials for me to review for treasurer's report. That it's been a long time coming, and I just really appreciate everything coming together this last month. So really thank you to everybody involved. Appreciate that.
Do you all have anything?
No.
So for those of you that weren't there, we had a public meeting last week for the Greenmont Park, and it went really well. Thank you guys for organizing that, and I think everybody was pleased who attended. We heard good feedback afterwards. There was a lot of overlap and consensus, I think, in the ideas that were proposed for the space, and so I thought that was all really positive and hopeful. That's all I have on that. All right, Property Management Committee. I should be prepared when I'm supposed to give the report. I think that, yeah, go ahead. No, I'm having trouble remembering. I'm sorry.
So we were staff working on 2 items. At the next property management meeting, we will come with a fully laid out side lot program for consideration for the board to consider. And the other matter that we spoke about is using part of the space back behind 430 Spruce for the city's tool lending library. Caitlin went out and did a survey, and so we'll share that with you and send that to the property management committee for review. I think there's still adequate space, but we can talk about that in committee.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Resource Development Committee, we don't have a chair for that at this point, so we did not have that meeting yet. I think we'll wait until we redo the structure of the board, and then we could figure out where we want to put people on the committees, if that's okay with everybody. Yeah, go ahead.
Do we want to keep the board meetings, those meetings on the agenda, or do you keep meeting as the resource / what it was previously, or do you want to wait?
I think we need to wait because I think we need to reallocate our board to all the committees. Right now, I feel like we're a little bit overlapped, and since Tim left, we need to look at everything again.
Okay, so remove right now we won't have any more resource development committees, or do you want to keep underutilized, or for right now?
No, I'm not trying to get rid of them. I just am saying there's no report because nobody's the chair.
Oh, okay.
We haven't met last time because there is really no committee. We need to figure that out, and I think after the city council approves the new configuration,
Okay.
that would be a good time.
So we'll keep the committee schedules as is.
I think so,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Underutilized properties, is there a report from that one? I don't think, we don't have a chair for that one either, so.
Was that the one that we
Reviewed the parcels?
that we
Is that-
yeah that we
Not this
did.
time around. That was the last
The
one.
previous?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So that will be the action item for that committee at the next meeting. We'll go through the properties transferred from the city and look at those ones that were kind of questionable, and look at staff's recommendations, and then make a full recommendation to the board next month.
Okay.
But I thought that should be under the Property Management Committee, right? Because that property is now owned by the agency, so property management should be everything that we own, and underutilized should be anything out in the universe that's not yet owned. I thought that was the distinction that we made between those two.
I believe so. I believe we looked at it in both committees, but yes.
Well, and I'm trying to not do that so that
Sure.
like people are seeing the same material twice in 2 different committees. So I think that was the
So
distinction.
is that an item then for the property management then? We'll bring, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know you've done that multiple times, and we're really depending, I think, now on the side lot program and the recommendations on if something is this big, it's going to go this way. So we don't need to see that list of properties again, I don't think, until we decide on the parameters for the side lot program.
Okay.
And then,
We'll focus on that. Okay.
Which I think is what we can present on at that next property management committee.
Yeah.
We've kind of tried to go through and define some of those criteria and how, like, you might go through and sort some of these and determine which ones would go into that extension program. So,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
Yep, so we can review that. at
Thank
that
you.
meeting.
Okay. All right. City manager's report?
Sure, thank you. The only thing that I had on my list as well was to recognize the Greenmont Public Committee, or Public Participation event. I agree that I thought it was a good event. I was very pleased that some of the discussions I think we've had at this agency as well as Bow Park, it all seemed to go very well, that the vision for that area seems to be a shared vision. So I wanted to thank the board's participation in that.
Thanks.
I will also highlight that this agency's request for looking at the structure is going forward for our first discussion piece on September 30th, our committee of the whole. That's where we introduce ordinances, and then we will seek feedback from council for a first and second reading at our October meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a report?
Just, yeah, two updates. One, again, thank you all for attending the Greenmont meeting. I well attended, and UDB did a great job, I think, presenting the case and the scope, so appreciate everybody's efforts on that. Just be aware that there are no meeting minutes from the month of August in your packet, as staff is still working to transcribe those from the online recording. And finally, just as a note, and I think Ms. Sarah kind of mentioned it in the packet, working with the chair and vice chair, we've kind of added some additional materials, like an executive summary that's supposed to try to inform the board of what the item on your agenda is going to be, what the discussion is going to be, and then also provide guidance of what you should be looking for. And if staff has questions or needs guidance on something, we will outline that in those reports going forward. So I hope they were useful this time. I'm sure there's room for improvement, but I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Thank you for doing that.
Sure.
Appreciate that. Ryan, do you have anything? Okay. On to unfinished business. The first item is demolition of properties and donations of properties. Do you have an update?
So good update. So contractors on board, I think that's been presented, but we've gotten all the clearances we need now. So actually going to be issuing a notice to proceed to demolition next week, and you will start seeing work promptly being done there. So thank you for your patience on that. The substantial projection completion date is November 21st. It will likely be done before then, but they have that time to work through their process. So that's all we have to report.
Okay. All right, next under unfinished is action items for the Board of Directors. So this is coming from our strategic planning session where we made a lot of to-do items and divided them up between the committees, but then there was a section of items that were left for the board as a whole, and I asked Ricky to put those in front of us again because I think that we need to look at them and we need to discuss with Jamie and make sure that we're getting her perspective on that. It's somewhere in here in the packet, right, Ricky?
Yes. It would be, and I'm sorry, there were no page numbers at the bottom of your reports. We will make that correction. It was under, it was a second staff report in your packet. So item B at the top of the page.
Looks like this.
It would go the financial report, staff item A, and then staff report item B.
Okay. All right, so I just want to run through these quickly and make sure that we're all on the same page. The first one is to complete a lower Greenmont small area study / an acronym, I can't remember what it stands for, NRSA, but it's the, NRSA is the
Neighborhood revitalization
strategy area, right, which would allow you to get
in my head now.
get some more streamlining of CDBG funds and using them in that area. So the small area plan was called for in the city's comp plan. Lots of people have mentioned the small area plan might be a good strategy for this area in general because we've got a whole bunch of different parts. And so I want to just discuss this and hear what you're thinking, I guess, because I think I said this at the last meeting, but when Adelheid and I met with a contact that Chris from UDV put us in touch with, he had this sort of different approach to development where he was community first, building out from what the community wants to see to the projects. And both of us were really struck by that approach, and he said when they have done projects that way, sometimes they find that the community doesn't want what the group that's trying to help them thinks they need, and so it just seems very important to me, and so I'm thinking about, as we put together this a bunch of property, how do we do this in a way that's not us imposing our will on people? And it seems to me that one way to do that would be to get a small area study plan in place, because that would be soliciting feedback, I think, in that process. And then you could have all of these different components like laid out so people could see them. So I guess I just wanted to put that out for you. And
Yeah, I think it's important from a planning perspective that we can tell a story and cast a vision of what are we working towards, even if that's a 10, 15-year plan, to be able to have something to go, this is what our goal is, and certainly it may change over time, the tasks that we need to do to get there, but I think having a neighborhood plan or a study, an assessment to go, we're not just taking things as they come to us, we're intentionally prioritizing what we're going to go after. Because yes, we do need to, as opportunities arise, we need to be ready to seize them, but not every opportunity is going to push that mission forward. So I think having a plan is important, so I would support that.
Can I ask, who did Chris connect you with? Who's?
Tipping Point,
I knew exactly who it was.
Jim Ambrose,
Yeah.
do you know him?
Oh, very well.
What are your thoughts?
We'll talk later.
Okay. Well, I don't know how he is it, and I'm not proposing that we necessarily use him or anything. I just thought that the strategy was interesting, and his thing was like, ask people what they want, find one project that people are really excited about and give it to them, which I think we already have with the park project. And so I just want to be thoughtful, I guess, as we move forward with this housing thing, that we don't just push something.
I agree with that.
100%.
So and I'm saying that because later on in the agenda is this discussion of the prospectus about this housing project, and I don't want to get out of line with, I don't want to put that out there, I guess, if we don't yet know what the community wants. And so is the planning thing something that we could move on like pretty quickly and start at least the community engagement part, do you think?
And certainly I would have to get some conclusion on what funding level is required for those efforts. Rarely is that assistance come free of charge, and does the board have the funds available for that? I do think, and not to jump too far into the prospectus conversation, but I think that there are some opportunities or some examples in here that show maybe we can still move forward in a way that sells the community and what we're looking for, as opposed to specifically focusing on just the housing project or things like that, where we're putting together something that sells our vision for the area and the assets that we have in that area. So I think there's an example in here that I think we can move forward with something,
Okay.
And still wait for getting some more of that community feedback.
Okay. All right. So I did talk to Chris a little bit about these two different plans, and he said they're sort of independent but could be related, and
That's, okay.
his thought on the NRSA one is you can go down that path and you should explore it, but we don't know what's going to happen in DC with that funding. The small area study, I think everybody's probably on board with the concept of that.
Sure.
And I would love to hear what that costs. And I mean, the Land Reuse Agency does have a pot of money that's in the regular bank account. And if you guys don't have money, I mean, we could at least consider whether we want to spend ours on that. But maybe by next time you could,
Sure. We have some history of what our small areas of studies, because we used AECOM and other consultants on this, so we can get a price of what that would look like.
yeah, if you could let us know what that includes and how long that takes, I mean, that would be helpful, I think, information. Anybody have any other comments or questions on that part?
I think a small area study that considers Greenmont's interests needs to be nested within a larger context of Morgantown interests too. I think there's a citywide and a localized neighborhood set of needs. They may not always align, but I think that whatever we do needs to be done with city priorities in mind also.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too. I think all the stuff that we're working on is trying to connect these areas, connect the downtown to Greenmont. Like, I think they're all a piece, yes.
And I think there's going to likely some valid discussions that will happen at the upcoming committee of the whole, as well as we're planning to talk about some affordable housing initiatives. And when we talk about that, we really recognize that there is a variety of housing that is needed, but the city is going to be doing some reflection on how do we, increase our housing stock. And so making sure those things are aligned, I think, are important.
Yeah, that sounds like good timing. Anybody else on that? All right, the next one is meeting with other land reuse agencies and urban renewal authorities. We met with a couple based on context that I had. Do you guys want to keep on meeting with others throughout the state?
Who else would you suggest? I mean, Charleston was informative, certainly. Who else is Huntington? Have we talked?
We haven't heard from Huntington
I
yet.
couldn't get, my last person at Huntington is no longer there, so if you want to reach out, they've got a lot of experience. I think Parkersburg's is pretty active too.
Yeah.
Parkersburg has a URA. They're very active, but I mean, it's still nice to get their perspective if you want, for sure.
I mean, if you think it would be helpful, I think we might as well, yes. The other ones, I think, are relatively new.
Yeah, those are the only two. I mean, Fairmont has one, but
I know Princeton started one, but I mean, it's pretty recent.
Okay, I can reach out to those folks.
I think Clarksburg has one, don't they?
I know they have different legislation to work with, but it might be interesting to go across the state border too and look at what Pennsylvania's doing, and talk to some municipalities in Pennsylvania.
Sure.
I mean, I think there's a good one in Pittsburgh, but it's so different, but.
Yeah.
We can
There's
find
some-
one on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Westmoreland, it comes to mind, Washington County.
Okay. So yeah, if you don't mind making those,
Yep.
that would be great. If you need anything from us, let us know.
Do you envision having more like a presentation type discussion like we've done at other meetings, or?
I mean, I guess without knowing what they're doing, we probably just want to hear kind of the highlights of like
Okay,
how they're structuring what their work is.
okay.
Short and sweet with time for questions,
That's the first thing we'll let them know.
All right, next is affordable housing development. Explore options, I guess, for different developers. I don't know. I think we probably need to discuss the prospectus thing first and then get back to that one. Other self-funding opportunities. I think that and I don't want to just keep talking, so please guys, feel free to jump in whenever you want, but since the budget season is going to be coming up soon, I think we should look again at whether there are existing standing funding streams that could be tapped for this agency. Jamie, I don't know if they've filled you in, but we've talked a few times about taking some money that the city's already bringing in that's aligned with our mission and carving off a little percentage of that to go to the land reuse agency, whether it's, I don't know, what rattle off the things that we've talked about. You don't remember?
Permits,
Yeah, permit fees.
Rental
Right.
fees.
We've never had anyone formally present those possibilities to us, but as you come up to this next budget season, I think if you could look at
Keep that in
that,
mind.
that would be helpful just to see, like, it could even be a very small percentage. Anything would be better than nothing. So,
we've also asked for an allocation in the past too, right? That has never happened, right?
yeah, we've never had a standard allocation. It's always been sort of project-based. We have had this sort of relationship where it seems like we're like a stepchild begging for money, and we don't want to have that anymore, since this is really a city arm that can make moves as it sees fit.
Understand, appreciate. Certainly will take that into consideration. I know until I go through the full budget cycle and understanding all of the needs, I don't want to overcommit to anything, but certainly
No.
will. I hear that and I understand and certainly appreciate what this board is doing, so I recognize that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're just trying to give you the background.
We certainly have explored this vacant property or abandoned property piece. That is a funding mechanism, is it not? Selling it off to the adjacent property owners, and that's part of this, I would think.
That's our own self-funding mechanism. I mean, I think what I was just thinking is if they have anything that they are already taking in that they could carve up for
Understood.
us, yeah, but yes.
That's, I mean, we have not acted on that, so we've teed it up and nothing's happened. There's been no sale, no transaction.
Right,
So I think that needs to be a priority.
right. Which we did talk about getting the broker on board for Black Diamond to rent out 430 Spruce, right? And that is
Yes.
in the works? Yes?
It is, that email exchange we had with the broker, everyone used the document that you linked from the city website with expected rents to update their strike price on the rent. But if they get a lessee to agree to that price, then the agency will accept it. And from my understanding, the rest of the agreement is in complete form. They made the revisions that I requested. I can follow up with Jeff to just see what we need to do to get this done.
That'd be great, thank you. All right, next up is getting a shared drive where we all have access to documents.
Yes, I brought some paperwork. I think that's all that was missing. We had somebody from IT on bereavement for a little bit, so that was kind of the holdup. But we just need some signatures. I think we were just missing yours, Laura, and yours as well, Brent. So you have a packet there, and it's just like a release to sign off so that we can get that started. But it shouldn't take long. Yeah, I think we're pretty much good to go, or at least all the pieces are in place now.
I did get an email from someone in IT today
good,
about
okay.
it, but I
Great.
couldn't get to it because it required like a sign into a Microsoft account, so.
Okay. We'll work through this, but we're
on
making
it.
some progress.
Okay,
so,
thank
yeah.
you, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, follow up with UDV on the conditions needs assessment. I think that was something that needed to happen if you're gonna do that area designation.
Right.
So I think that I will try to schedule a meeting with Chris next week based on our email exchange today. And if any of you want to be involved, we can do that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, communications. Let's see, work with communications to update promotional materials. Any updates on that end?
No additional information. What?
Just with the communication stuff?
I'll go back. There's not a major update on that right now. I think we were just talking about Facebook stuff too. I think that option is still open. Since you guys will be advertising properties, it is maybe a little bit different than some of how the other boards operate. So it sounds like we just need to kind of work with Brad to get things set up. So yeah, I think we're pretty well on board with the Facebook thing too.
So is he gonna do that like this month? or
Yes,
is he waiting?
I think we didn't know quite how we wanted to proceed, if I recall. Like, at first we were saying maybe we didn't want to do a Facebook page, and then now we're kind of coming back to wanting to do it, right?
Yeah, there was this, I mean, we had an in-person meeting with communications and I didn't think we were going to do it, and then there was discussion about having it again, but a limited context, right? Just for the promotion of property and programs that the agency offers. So,
Yeah, I think there was some vacillation back and forth between how to go about that, but now it seems like we can move forward. And so if it's like this month we want to get it done, I can definitely send an email out to make sure that we're moving forward.
I mean, it seems useful, right?
Oh, yeah, when we demo these properties, it'd be great to kind of put that out there, show what we've been doing.
Yeah.
As some type
Yeah,
of-
the point is to use Marketplace, like you mentioned, rather than like operate it as like an agency, like posting when meetings are happening.
Well, but I
That-
thought that was what we can't do. We can't use Marketplace. That's what we determined. The city's page won't allow for them
The
to have
city's
that
page
account.
couldn't, but you guys having your own page could, if that makes sense.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was what was complicated about it, was like trying to figure out, okay, is it gonna be a city page, or will it be your own page that this, like, our comms team is admins on? And so anyway, it sounds like it would be that. It would be a.
Because us is not, I mean, none of us are gonna run the page, so it would definitely be your comms team running it, right?
Right.
I think so, yes, but I imagine they would add a couple of you guys on as admins too. I don't know that you would have to engage with it if you didn't want to, but, yeah. It would be our comms team as admins with adding maybe a couple of you guys as admins as well.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it would be great if we could do that. I think
Okay.
it would be nice to like have a presence there and be able to share things.
Yes.
Could the comms leadership present a list of things we can and cannot do? Because it sounds like we cannot post committee, but that we can engage in marketplace. So if there's things related to, like we cannot post committee meetings, then that's fine, just need to know that.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that'll be their function as moderators on there too. So, yeah, for sure.
We'll check on that.
Anything else on that list of tasks from strategic plan? Okay. All right, so the next step is thinking about the prospectus that we had discussed for the block of properties we're putting together for housing. And this came from Chris saying that it might be a good idea to put a prospectus together so that you can sort of get that in front of potential developers. And Ricky has presented a couple different types of prospectuses that we could do, whether it's real estate, which, you know, in my experience with commercial properties would be like survey, appraisal, utility information, like just kind of more property related stuff. And then what you've proposed is more bigger picture, like planting the scene, I guess. And so I'll let you just explain what you've presented here as options.
Yeah, so the real estate prospectus, or the memorandum as it's also called, is basically a call to say, here's what this property is worth, here's what its marketability is, here's what revenues are. And obviously for the agency, we don't have that, right? We just have a space right now that's vacant. So, you know, looking at the options there, staff would recommend, if you want to move forward with doing some sort of higher level, like an investment prospectus, basically to say to developers, if you want to head this direction, look here. We have property that may or may not fit your needs or your program goals or objectives, and the projects that you pursue, and come take a look at the community. We spoke with and the folks from Neighborhood Development Services out of Ohio, and that was a contact that was made by Mr. Fletcher and everything. But there are a lot more other folks out there looking for potential projects. So the prospectus is just a way to inform these different entities that there is property in Morgantown that may or may not be available for your project. So that's what the higher level is meant to do.
Do we
But-
kind of have to, I mean, it sounds like we kind of need to tell them what we're looking for too, right?
Right, so that was based on our previous conversation about the small area plan. You would want to kind of tell that story, what the vision is for the property, what would be appropriate or not appropriate. The prospectus from Wood County also talks about like some demographic data that we could pull quickly and put together. But you're right, we don't necessarily have a narrative yet on what the larger area will look like in the future. So again, you may want to hold back from moving forward with the prospectus, or if you just do want to get that out in front of people, we could put something together for you to do that. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know, I was gonna say, back to kind of the discussion we were having with the small area plan. If you look at the Parkersburg one, I think it tells the story to say, hey, come take a look at Morgantown and what we have to offer and why you should consider looking in our area. And if we're not quite sure what we want to put forward to the vision, because we want to do some more community and stakeholder engagement to make sure what we're planning for that area is appropriate, maybe we take the path forward of really marketing this area as a whole through something like the Parkersburg one.
I mean, just from talking to Chris, it sounded to me like people are interested in Morgantown and coming to this market. And so it's not really necessarily that we need to sell the market as much as we have property that they couldn't have accessed before. So, I mean,
The demand is high for certain types of housing, affordable housing types, and therefore when folks apply for certain tax credit funded projects, they can score higher because there's that demand based on the analysis that they do. So there is demand for sure.
But would the prospectus help kind of promote that project within those circles, Ricky?
I think it would.
I mean, to me, this is a template that you could do for this project and repeat parts of it for the next. And I mean, once you do it, you have the baseline that you just kind of modify to. So I think it's worth doing. I mean, I think you gotta get it out there, and then you can tailor it to the site, because hopefully we're gonna have another site you're gonna do, and then another. You just keep moving it.
and I mean, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think you could do this and the real estate one too and package them up together. But I think it's all going to work better as a sale if you know what you're asking them to do as well. But yeah, I think if you want to go ahead and pull together the bigger picture items, right? I mean, that's going to only help us.
And this is something city staff can do, right? Like, we don't have to contract this out.
I think pulling together the content, yes, and we'll work with comms to present it in a professional way.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So the city of Morgantown one is going to be really helpful once the city has their meeting, determining kind of what buckets of affordable housing they really want to target. And that kind of city of Morgantown, you know, we've identified this as our major needs, is really going to be helpful in that overview document, right? So that prospectus, looking at the overview of Morgantown, needs that. Ours may need to wait until after we do a small study if we think that we are going to adjust or limit any kind of targeting or limiting of units based on neighborhood feedback. So if the neighborhood says we really need to focus on people whose incomes are that of a police officer or a teacher, then that's going to be one thing. If they say we really need 3-bedroom units, that's very specific. If we say that the city as a whole really needs things that are really plain and simple, you know, we need a few that are below 80% of the median income. We need a few that are going to be under, you know, lower than that. We need a few that are going to be lower than that. And that really all this space can handle and still be competitive is 2-bedroom units. Then we can move forward with our prospectus and say, we're open to things being affordable housing below 80% of the median income. But we need to know what we're comfortable moving forward with in order to have that limited of the of what targeting we're looking at for the income. Because that says a lot about what they can go for funding.
Right. I also think we need to know what the constraints are from the funding source, which I don't know if affordable was defined in that earmark, but I know that there's a component that you have to, you know, check a box for. So hopefully that's something you all can look up and.
Yeah, so if we did move forward with the perspectives at a very high level, it would open up opportunities for developers that are approaching it from different perspectives. Workforce housing, senior housing, it could be a lot of different things if we're not saying what upfront what we're looking for. And I agree, I don't think we're there yet. We're not there to say this is what we want this area to become and this is what would be appropriate or not appropriate. So if you're throwing that prospectus or laying that out in front of a bunch of developers, they'll pick and choose what they want to respond with or not. So we may get more calls into the office and saying, hey, we want to look at that 1.5 acres. Can we set up something? Or we may not. But it's at least getting it out there known that there's land available in Morgantown if you're looking in this area.
And it could also be that we put it out there to developers and say, let us know if we want this to be affordable housing, what would make it most economical and get the best use for this space. Make the pitch to us.
What's feasible for you?
Yeah, what's feasible for you? Because it is a small footprint. And for that small footprint to be feasible is going to be tight. So they may have only a couple of options for it to be economical.
I don't disagree with that, Laura, but I think to Adelheid and Jessica's point earlier, you got to listen to the neighborhood first, right? You got to have some guardrails. You got to have some parameters of this is our wish. May not be reality, but you got to say this is what we've heard from the neighborhood. So you probably have to have that, and then you can marry it with, okay, the what ifs. So, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both that's going to have to come together to kind of script this pitch. So.
Shouldn't those be sequenced, really? I mean, if we're
Yes.
talking about a small area study, don't we start there before we do a prospectus?
Well, I mean, I think the study could be really a kind of a listening meeting, right? Kind of a design charrette, or you just kind of a workshop, kind of like what you guys did with the park, right? Kind of get the neighborhood together, listen to them, and see, you know, put some things on paper, see what they're thinking.
Well, and for that one, we should be able to go to the neighborhood association and
Yeah.
not have them come to us, so we should have even more full
Yeah,
participation,
and I think that's our role.
And I think we could do that soon, don't you
And I
think?
think we should.
Yeah, and I think it's also valued as we have that conversation to say, you know, here's what we would like. Here's our dream and our wish of if we got everything. And then tease that down to what are really some of the priorities and what are some of the non-starters? Because we know realistically it has to make sense for whoever's coming in to develop this land economically. So for this group to say what's on the wish list versus what's our must-haves, I think as we engage the neighborhood, it's really important to tease that out a little bit further because the list of must-haves can't be the same as everything we want. I think that will be a practical issue.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason why we can't do both of these, like, start them immediately.
Yeah,
Because we
absolutely.
can't do one without the
Absolutely.
other, and we need the prospectus to bring people in. So once we have the small area study done, then we can tailor what those offers are. or
We can
bids or whatever it is.
fine tune and
Yeah.
adjust.
But we need to do both of these in order to get anything developed, so I don't know.
And it may take a couple months to get the prospectus done, so probably starting on it while we work on the small study is probably a good idea.
So we staff certainly will work together to pull and comms on this kind of high level prospectus, and then we'll get together some of the information on the cost of what the small area studies have been in other locations so that we can bring that back. And we can share that via email to the board as well.
And then would you also be able to tell us what the constraints are on the funding, the earmark funding, so that we know what technically we have to hit there in terms of housing?
I have a question about the small area study. Is there a reason why we would proceed with a small area study, something that sounds official, that sounds like putting out an RFP and sounds like waiting for people to get back to us, sounds like a 30-day notice, and then scheduling, which might be a 3 to 6 month process, versus just having a listening session with the community? Is there a benefit to just having a listening session like us?
Right, we can't go right to Chris Fletcher, his firm. I mean, aren't they on retainer in that regard?
In the CDBG, I mean, yes, I believe in some capacity, but I think there's two things. The comprehensive plan recommends that a larger, full-scale study be done, and that's what I think we've been talking about. But what I think a listening session, just to get the conversation going, I think that's valuable as well.
Well, so maybe then if you could get the constraints from the funding on for us, we can have the listening session at the next, neighborhood association meeting. We don't have to wait on that. We could just say, here's the funding that's coming, here's what we have to hit, what do you guys want to see? And then use that to inform later things, right?
Yeah.
A formal small area study would do that, though. It would kick off a listening session and have several stakeholder meetings, meet with the individual group, yeah, so. if
But
you
I'm
just want-
also, to her point, if that's going to be 9 months down the road, then that'll be frustrating, so.
Yeah.
Right. So let us get back with the price, let's do our homework on that, and we'll get back to you, and then we can
We'll
decide.
get
if
you
we
the
wanna-
funding limitations as
Yeah.
well.
But you don't think UDV it's not like we can just go right to them because they're on call?
I don't.
We'll
Is
have
there a
to-
firm that's on-call? You don't have an on-call engineer or on-call planner?
We have on-call engineers, but I'm not sure if they have those resources in their office. They may or may not. We can look into that.
That'd be worth looking into.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't rocket science, this is,
No. I think in the past, I think the cities utilize AECom.
Yeah, but they've got,
Yeah.
they're 110,000 people in the firm, so,
Sure.
yeah.
Yep.
Any other thoughts on this?
We just make action.
If it's under a certain amount, do we want to proceed with scheduling it before the next meeting? Because we're getting into the holidays, so if it's under a certain amount, does this board want to approve moving forward with that, with our funding, so that the city can move forward?
For the study?
Staff, I would want to bring you a scope of work.
Yeah.
And you weigh in on that before we do that. Staff would rather have, yeah.
Can we delegate a subcommittee to make a decision? I'm just trying to figure out what we could do that would be moving forward.
You could bring it to
before 30
property
days.
management if you want.
Yeah, I'm happy to be involved.
Okay.
I think we could move on to the community meeting. I mean, that's easy.
Because I just don't think there's a downside. If we have too many community meetings, like what's gonna hurt?
The other component of this is traditionally these small area plans have been initiated through the planning commission, right? So there's a process. If the plan stays kind of adjacent to what's officially on the books in terms of what the city's guidelines and policies are for development in the neighborhoods, and then if you adopt the small area plan, that becomes some of a guiding document that staff looks at when other development opportunities come up.
If people need to rezone properties or things like that, it becomes a official document that can be looked to in those decisions.
Well, and I mean, obviously, you guys know a lot about what these are. I just honed in on those words because they seemed like similar to what we need here. So
Right.
if that's not what we need, that's okay. I think we're all just looking for a way to like put something together that people can like visualize and see and
Yep.
get behind. So we'll defer to you on what form that takes.
I would be reluctant, though, to say what the neighborhood may want in this small area down close to the creek and on the border of the neighborhood would be, let me rephrase what I'm saying. I would say that what the neighborhood may want on the border of the neighborhood close to the creek may be different from what they would want elsewhere within that ward or neighborhood. And I would not want to say that zoning should be, that anything would be rezoned for that. So I just wanted to, your last statement, wanted to make clear that any small study or study that applied to this one property may not apply to the rest of the neighborhood.
Certainly, and Ricky, correct me if I'm wrong, but when
Yeah.
we talk about the small area plan, I think we're envisioning the neighborhood beyond just this one parcel. And so maybe that's where some of
Okay.
that connection can come closer together, is if we're talking about how do we get that community feedback of what we want to do on this parcel, this small area plan, isn't necessarily that path. It's what's the vision for how we want to redevelop that neighborhood and that area as a whole. So
And where does
not
that-
just that one project.
And where does that piece of property fit into the larger
Okay.
vision? Yep.
But if we're looking for community feedback on the parcel that we have that we're ready to act on, there's probably a lot less formal of processes to go
Right.
through.
Oh, this is really good clarification for me. I needed that. So do we need then a small area study? I mean, do we need feedback or do we need a small area study?
So when I started thinking about this small area plan, I'm thinking about all the components. You've got this housing piece, you've got this park piece, you've got the potential for some commercial development in a property that we don't yet own. You've got the potential for a whitewater feature that no one is on, but like if there were a plan and everyone could see how these things relate, maybe a developer would come here and make that whitewater feature or not whitewater, but you know what I'm saying, lazy river thing, because they could see all of the connections. And that to me is what multiple people have said to me that we need.
Right.
If you want MUB to take those CSOs out of the creek, you need to show them that there's a whitewater feature right here, that there's a housing development right here, that, that's, I think, where this is coming from. It's just like, let's connect all the dots that are happening in our community and show how these things relate.
Yeah, but I think that's a lot more than going to a neighborhood meeting and checking a box. I mean, I think it's a stakeholder assessment. It's looking at, what are the plans with Friends of Deckers Creek and MRTC and Green Space Coalition and the university perhaps, and who knows who else, as well as the neighborhood association. So I just think, calling one thing a small area plan and the other thing, just sort of, let's have a meeting and then we'll check the box and be done. I think there's a big distance between those two goals.
Well, and I think what I'm saying about like showing all of these related pieces may not be a small area plan. I mean, maybe it's some other thing that we could hire someone to do, and maybe it's a rendering and that's all we need. I don't know, but.
The comprehensive plan says we need to do this.
Right,
So,
right.
Yes.
And so it kind of seems like it makes sense.
Right.
Small area plan would look at it from a lot of different perspectives too. Like you might look at demographic information, you might look at how housing relates to green space. You might look at sustainability as like I shared a super extensive one a long time ago of that you were familiar with that North Potomac Yard one? It would be like a reduced version of that, essentially, versus, I think, this investment prospectus, which is more of just maybe looking at specific areas and what those opportunities are in that specific area, rather than saying, from a demographic perspective, here's where we might want to put housing in, or from an investment perspective, here's a good area for mixed use. You know, this is more like, here's a parcel and here's an idea for that parcel to sell like a development area, you know, so yeah. So I think the value of the small area plan would be to show your vision for housing, plus your vision for green space, plus your vision for transportation. And it would be nice to see, and as part of that effort, you might get some of that community input at the beginning of all of that. So, yeah.
And the key to that, just to follow up what
Yeah.
you said, if it's adopted by the city, is here's what it's going to look like. Then when somebody comes to develop in that area and they propose something off the charts, then there's justifications to
Yeah.
say, no, we're going to deny these applications to rezone, or variances for height, or it gives the city
Floor area
more of
ratio.
a... Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So can we just
So-
agree to go ahead with that?
She's gonna look into the scope and the money and get back
So
to
I
us
think
on that.
we can move forward with getting the information for the small area plan, get the numbers and get that sorted out. But I think we could also do a really high level, here's this property, here's this acre and a half, and get it out to people if you wanted to now. If not, and you wanna wait to that, that's fine, that's whatever the board.
I would get out, yeah, I mean, I think you gotta have some basis. I mean,
Yeah.
you gotta have some rules to play by and input. So I would wait.
What do you think we need to wait for?
Well, I mean, the plan, I mean, I think that's what we've talked about.
So right now, with what we have information available in our prospectus, we would be we'd be saying, here's the city's demographics, here's the investments that are going on, we have a green space being built over here next to this site. We talk about those high level things, but to your point, that's all we could really do at this point.
And that's not to say that you can't,
Right.
it's not to say you can't go out and solicit interest, right? You could go out and push it and see who's interested. I don't think you want to go out and push a project yet.
Oh, I agree with you, but I thought you were saying you didn't want to go to the community and ask what they wanted to see.
No, I think, yeah, absolutely you can now. Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, so I think we all agree on that part.
Yeah,
We can
yeah.
have a community meeting
Yeah,
and see
but
what they would like.
To Brent's point though, too, it's part of the plan, right? It's part of
Yes.
the small area plan. So there's a little bit of a danger of duplication that we're gonna go do this and then the consultant's gonna come back and do it again.
Right.
And maybe that's okay. And when you go to the community, you need to tell them that, right?
Sure.
That this is a start. We're gonna come back to you again and, you know, there's a process here. So that's all.
Okay.
But no, I think action is now.
Okay,
So rather than moving forward with developing a prospectus, we're going to try to have this input listening session.
no, I
do
thought we're
both.
doing all
Yeah,
three.
all three.
Go ahead with the prospectus.
Yeah, yeah.
We want to do the meeting, but we
Okay.
want to hear the constraints on the funding before we go to the meeting, I think.
Yeah.
Because we can't just say it's open
Yeah.
for anything,
Right.
it's constrained. And then third, we want to see more about the small area plan and what that entails.
Okay.
Yeah,
And in the meantime, too, I'll start putting together a list of folks. I mean, I've got a friend that's on a national nonprofit housing group in California that West Virginia's in their purview. So, and they are very well funded, and they should be doing work here. So, I mean, we'll get people like that kind of engaged and get a list together of who might be the interested parties.
Okay.
yeah, that would be helpful.
So we want to bring that plan of action on those three items to property management to unpack it a little bit.
Sure, that'd be great. Anything else? Per Dave, I believe we need a motion to adjourn.
Is there nothing for executive session?
No, I don't believe so. Did you have anything
I didn't hear the last.
for executive session?
Executive.
Do we want to talk about the things we can't talk about that I emailed you about earlier today in executive session? Yes.
All right, sure.
All right. If you all have time, we can go briefly into executive session. We need a motion.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
All right. We will not be coming out for any further business after executive session.
Thank you.